Hello.
Hello.
Oh, good morning. How is it going?
Eternal
Oh my
glory.
gosh, spoiler alert. I'm just kidding.
All caps.
All caps. I didn't put it all caps in the title of
Well, it
the
would have
the
thrown off
document.
the, yeah.
It's just like a little aggressive for hey,
It's so
we
people know,
haven't
Dumbledore is screaming.
yeah. we
He
haven't
said calmly.
yeah, we haven't yet had an all caps title to an episode, so I thought it was a little much right
Yeah,
now.
caps are overused. We should be all lowercase.
I use
Eternal
all lower. I
glory.
don't use caps when I text on Discord. I don't like caps in
Such a
casual
rogue.
casual conversation.
Such a rogue. Speaking of a rogue, you played Skyrim
Oh, yes,
a
I
couple of
did.
nights ago
I did.
for
It
several
was oh
hours.
my gosh, I was rewatching parts of it because I had some excellent moments where it was just out of control. I don't even know what
Yes.
I mean, part of the hilarity comes from the fact that I'm not very good at it. Like I'm like, "Oh, wait, how do I fight?" I took me like 7 tries to take down the first troll that I saw and I was like, "Okay, this
Sir
is
Robin
not
bravely
good."
ran away.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Well,
yes,
there
there
was
was
the
that.
one you like turned the corner and saw something, and you were
Yeah.
just like, "Nope."
Yep. I
It's pretty great.
yeah. Well,
That's
also
the point of the game.
there's
It's your
a
game to enjoy.
dragon.
Yeah.
And how am I supposed to fight a dragon? Okay, the dragon absolutely has an
I don't know.
advantage on
How will
me
Harry
cuz
fight a
it's
dragon?
like flying in the air and I'm like on the ground. So no matter what, like it can see me. It's not
Yes, it
like
can.
anyway, yes. So I did not do very well against this dragon. Well, I ran away successfully.
Very
Though
bravely.
later on in the gameplay, I noticed I don't know what happened. Maybe I took the dragon to, like, an area where other people started fighting it because it
Mm.
said I was like, "Oh, is that a dra" I was too scared to look behind, but I shoulda just looked at the top of my screen because it said dragon and had health bar, and it was injured. So I don't know how it got injured, but there was a dragon that was injured, and it was chasing me.
Mm.
And then I got jumped by a cultist, which I was not expecting at all. I got almost thrown into jail for trying to defend some random lady that I decided to help. Then I couldn't find her. And so, yeah, that was my Skyrim journey on Friday.
It was a good Friday. Yeah,
Yeah.
Skyrim is great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of flexibility and random things that happen. And like all the storylines, there's so many little side quests that are
Well, I absolutely have racked up because I keep talking to people and they're
yeah.
like, "Oh, hey,
That's what the
can you
game
help
is.
me?
That's why
Can you
people play for hundreds of hours. Yes,
can you help me
100%.
with this?" And I just
You
have
do
like this
everything.
running line of quests, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be doing something with
I
the
think
power of my
am I
voice." I don't
imagining
know.
also sometime this week you were like, "Oh, can I kill an NPC?"
No,
Like
it
a
was
quest giver or something?
oh no, I was playing on my own and I
Yeah,
came across a sketchy vendor like on the
right.
path and I basically tried to intimidate him to just give me the things that he was trying to sell me and he and he was like no and so then I was just like and then he got aggroed so I was like okay, I guess I'm killing you like I don't know. I guess I could have just run away. I think I'm faster than
Nope.
these people. I don't know. So I chose violence at the end of the day in all of these interactions, except for the dragon. But yeah, that was Friday. Yesterday we played a bunch of games as well. Trying to think
Yes.
what else. It's like super foggy outside.
Yes, it
It
is.
is it's like a spooky outside, even though
Yes.
it's
Hi,
November.
Winnie.
Yeah, we have our puppy. Our puppy is very satisfied sitting next to us.
It's a long chapter. Do you want to get
We
in?
watched also part 1 of Deathly Hallows.
Yes, we did.
So
Yes, we
we're
did.
not done with the movies yet,
We're
but we will be
close.
soon.
Very close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Mine's
Lauren's
ready.
ready.
Turn to page 171, the Triwizard Tournament. Today's lesson is called Eternal Glory.
Oh my god.
The chapter begins with our trio navigating a torrential downpour. Oh, and Peeves dropping water balloons. They get to the castle, then the Great Hall, and watch the sorting ceremony. They eat a feast, during which Hermione becomes aware that House-elves prepare all the food for no money and refuses to eat. The new Defense Against the Dark Arts instructor, Professor Moody, arrives at Hogwarts in the midst of Dumbledore telling the students there would be no inter-house Quidditch tournament, and instead there would be the Triwizard Tournament, a dangerous competition for only of-age witches and wizards with a 1,000 galleon prize.
1,000 galleons, which I keep forgetting how much like actually a galleon is, but 1,000
It's a
galleons
lot.
sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a good amount. It's
Yeah.
not like an insane amount, but it's a good amount.
Yeah, so I said to Jeff as I was reading, I was like, "Oh, who's providing these funds? Is it the taxpayer? Do you think they pay taxes? Probably not. No, it's probably a bunch of rich people, witches and wizards. Yeah,
No,
I
I
don't
hope it's
know.
taxes. That that would make me so happy. Yeah, that would
There's
be
like,
just hilarious.
it's still like all the mundane issues. It's like, okay, where should we spend our magical money?
Yeah.
And people are just
Yeah.
arguing about it. That's what I'm imagining now that I said it out loud. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about realism for a second. So, this is a good segue into just the small thing that I
Okay.
looked up. So, we heard the Sorting Hat give this long song.
It was like, okay, dude, get off your pedestal. This is way too long of a song.
It's
But okay.
literal
Okay.
stool, yes.
Okay.
Uh, and he's talking about how like the 4 founders decide to recruit, the youth to go to school,
Mm-hmm.
starting a school. And what I was thinking about was like, as we've talked about quite a bit, Hogwarts is pretty small,
Mm-hmm.
smaller than both of our high schools.
Yeah.
It's a small place.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some calculations I found at a website with Mad as a Fish. So I want to give them credit. And they were doing a bunch of calculations and about like a lot of calculations on this website. A lot of like how many students were actually there, how many students are actually in Harry's class, etc. And one of the things that they calculated was an approximation of, at the time of Harry Potter, the ratio in the UK of wizards to muggles.
Okay.
About 1 to 20,000 is their calculation.
All right.
Okay. If the population, if that proportion stays the same,
okay.
Let's go back to when Hogwarts was founded, so 990 AD. The population of the landmass that will become the UK in the future was 1.25 million people.
Okay.
If the ratio is the same, this means that there are only 62 or 63 witches and wizards of all ages in all of the UK.
When they open the school.
Correct.
Okay.
Of which they were before. And of which, like, who is at the schooling age, which is only a 7-year, it's probably 1 or 2, or maybe 3. So the moral of the story, as I've written here, is just, it's useful to suspend disbelief.
Okay, as you were talking, what I was thinking of is oh my gosh, Uniting Wizards, a YouTube channel that also started covering Harry Potter Wizards Unite when I did. Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
Did some theory about, or not, I don't know if it was a theory. It was more kind of like an argument for dissolving the statute of secrecy, or maybe it wasn't exactly that. I'm probably misquoting it, but it also was tying into this idea of why pureblood supremacy is deeply flawed, aside from the fact that it's pureblood supremacy, but like in the sense of like an existence of the wizarding world, that you need to be with muggles in order to sustain your population. So that's what I was thinking of as you were saying this, is like this little tiny, because I'm looking at this 990 and there were only 62 to 63 witches and wizards when they opened the school. It doesn't seem like it has grown much since then. I mean, 990 to
right. So I think there's
1,000
one
years,
of two situations. Either when they opened the school, it doesn't make any sense because there were only a handful of kids in the whole UK, or the proportion of witches to wizards was much higher to muggles. For some reason, there was more of them relative to the general population. Or, this is all nonsense, or Hogwarts in Harry's day, there should have been a huge number of wizards and witches.
Now you're making me think about also like the population impact of the first Wizarding War.
Right.
Like people died.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's
No
like
doubt.
another generation of,
Yeah.
or it is Harry's generation of kids that would
Right.
be
But
impacted
put
if you have
another way,
people.
like the estimations I was seeing were between 600 and 1,000 students at Hogwarts when Harry's there.
Mm,
The population ratio between Harry's time and then is about 1/50th. So at the launch, it would be like 20 students maximum. I mean, it's really interesting, but that doesn't even make sense. I mean, yeah,
I don't know.
it's really fun. And then interesting, one last tidbit on here. There was another kind of uh, numerical challenge about the Quidditch World Cup, which the claim was 100,000 wizards, and following some of the similar math there, that it was 100,000 witches and wizards at this thing.
Yeah.
Similar math showed that that would be like over 30% of the entire wizarding population in the whole world.
Mm.
And there's a lot of interesting dilemmas there of like, well, Americans don't follow Quidditch generally, so they might not go. We don't necessarily see that many Asian people there, so like there's just an interesting demographics question.
Well, yeah, part of it also because I've been thinking about this as especially when we were introduced to Durmstrang and Bobatons, that this is a world that's still in the making from the perspective of J.K. Rowling. Like that's why I think there's this clarifier in there of like, oh, the biggest 3 wizarding schools in Europe, like they can't possibly house all of the witches and wizards in that area.
Right.
And yeah, so there's a lot that's just kind of like it's not fully fleshed out, so that's probably part of like also these.
No, it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of effort that it would take to make math consistent with actual demographics is just not worth it at all.
No.
But we can enjoy
It's
the
like
lunacy of it all.
that PlayStation little anachronism line that was like, oh, Dudley
Right.
in a PlayStation, and it's like, or he threw his PlayStation out
Can't
the
get
window.
everything right. Let's be honest. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of sorting or is there
Yeah,
more
no,
to
no.
Okay. So speaking of sorting
Way
and
too
like
much.
students and like, joining Hogwarts and being sorted, that's what they do.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions that I didn't really have time to delve deep into fan theories or speculation. So if you have any of those, you can put them either in the comments of this video, or if you're listening on Spotify, there should be a Q&A that's like, okay, what do you think? Okay. This hat is happening, and apparently the brains of the founders, which we'll get to in a second, the brains of the founders are in this hat, and it's its own thing, and it sorts people and sings a song.
I don't know if it's the literal brains. I always
No,
took it as very like magical.
It is magical, but okay. I'll get
Fusion.
to that in
All
a
right.
second. When was this song created? Like, was it from the very beginning? Like, the hat was created and was like, I'm going to sing the song. Because Ron is very much like.
Just general songs? Because I think Ron even points out that, like, he must have the hat takes a year.
Yeah.
And probably writes a different song. Because he says it's a different song.
It is a different song every year. But what I'm saying is, when was, in general, the song created? Like, did the hat just like get placed on the head and do it, and then after like I don't know 5 years was like, okay, I'm gonna make
sing
this.
A song.
Yeah, I'm gonna sing a song. Yeah. Or was it always from the beginning being like just the hat is a theatrical?
You mean
being.
At the starting when there was one student?
Yeah.
I see.
And then I want to know specifically, like all along that line, at what point in the singing of these songs was Salazar painted as a very bad guy? Because I imagine, especially if, because that was my other thing is like, okay, the founders were sorting as they were there, but then they were like, okay, we gotta, something that outlives us. Salazar probably lived on, especially after the clash
schism.
and everything. Yeah, the schism. So there must have been a point where the hat wasn't aggressive towards Salazar.
It's Gryffindor's hat, so maybe eventually he was just like, well, I'm taking Gryffindor's side. So I'm just
like increasingly got worse year after year. It's just like this person
power hungry Slytherin.
I know. Well, because in the original it was more tame. It was just like, oh, Slytherins are cunning or whatever. It wasn't like so, and it wasn't even directed to the founder. It was just kind of like the archetype of the house. And then my other question related to this weird magical stuff that it makes the hat what it is its personality, like it's own, or is it like a mishmash of the founders? Like, and
yeah, one every 4 years, he just absolutely loves Slytherin.
And
Slytherin's the best.
are the founders still living on through this magical enhancement
It's
of
probably like a
their
portrait.
intellect?
Yeah, it's probably similar magic of that.
I guess
like,
the portraits do respond back, but I thought when we looked at portraits, it was like the portraits were limited in what they could, how it wasn't like they were completely fully sentient. It was like they had like boundaries of what they could, how they could respond.
Right.
So those were my questions. I guess the hat is pretty consistent and doesn't go, but it is weird because it does respond back to you.
Yeah.
I know it's a legilimens, but it has that sort of, maybe it is more along the lines of a portrait, but in a different form.
Harry has a conversation with it in Chamber of the Secrets without putting it on his head. Like it's still animated, and it is doing the song. It's just sitting on the stool. It's not like on anybody's head. Yeah.
I had many questions.
They talk about how like, well, it does sit in the headmaster's office. Like he probably sees a lot.
Well, according to Pottermore, it says contains the intelligence of the 4 founders. Is skilled at legilimency. Like this is I know the founders are, up there in the sense
literally?
of that's what it says on Wizarding World, which was Pottermore, which is official Wizarding World stuff.
So it has the combined intelligence of the 4 most powerful witches. But again, there were only 62 witches and wizards at that time, so they probably weren't even that smart.
This is like, it's not a Horcrux because I don't think anyone died, but it's like something that's weird like a Horcrux where it's like, the thing that's most fascinating with me, aside from like Voldemort's obsession with not dying, is how witches and wizards preserve memory in a variety of different ways, like legacy and all of that. And it seems that with magic, they attempt to do things that are as close to the original as possible. Like we tell stories and it's like, oh, we pass down stories and they become mythologies and whatever. But that's different than like having the actual person, like, or a vision of the person communicate and be like, oh, this is how it is.
You got ghosts, you got portraits, you got something like the Sorting Hat. You got obviously Horcruxes. Yeah, pensives. There's a lot there about letting go.
Yeah. I'm gonna pop up on screen also though. This is the original hat sketch that J.K. Rowling drew of the Sorting Hat. Doesn't it look so cute? It's just a little baby. It has little patches and it's just like, oh, I'm a little hat. That's so cute. But yeah, there's a lot on Wizarding World about it. The Sorting Hat is notorious for refusing to admit that it was wrong in a sorting. That's something. So this is why it's interesting because I'm like, okay,
has the personality of these 4.
Which personality? Yeah, exactly.
All of them,
exactly. Yeah, and on the occasions that Slytherins have been altruistic. So, the Sorting Hat is actually contributing to the discourses or, reinscribing those discourses that these characteristics define a person or like this is who they are.
Yes.
Like
the entirety of sorting. We've talked about it before and we'll talk about it again because even at the end of book 7 it comes into play.
Yeah.
About like when should people be sorted? And ultimately the question, should they be sorted at all?
But
is there a usefulness?
This hat is refusing to say that it was wrong.
It's just arrogant, as I'm sure like, most of the
you're saying
were.
That it's some like beyond being sort of thing that can't be. You can't have an in between. You can't have. We talked about this at some point. You can't have a new house. I mean, that's not like something. There's no like
or 2 houses
change. Yeah. Or you can't switch houses.
Yeah.
You can't, it's
yes. It's actually very, very much an educational analog. Like it's really quite, this stuff happens all of the time with sorting. Yeah.
Also, apparently the Sorting Hat was not in the original plans for Hogwarts. I think I might have said this before, maybe in book
addition.
1. But J.K. Rowling was like going back and forth between different ways. Like she knew that there would be houses and there would be different qualities, but like how do you distribute the students among these houses? So there were different options, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, short straws,
Mm-hmm.
chosen by team captains, which, wow, like that would be pretty intense. And names out of a hat. So that's like how it evolved from there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good to be like somewhat third party ish, even if it's like this weird magical object, to be like, okay, there's this like, it's kind of like this Triwizard Tournament selection
Mm-hmm.
thing of like this impartiality of like, you're not a person that is choosing, because
Mm-hmm.
we can clearly point to that person and say, oh, they're flawed or they're wrong. You bestow it upon this magical
Well, it's
object, you know?
interesting. Yeah. It is, yes. There's the obscurity of objectivity, like
Mm-hmm.
by making it's like an algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And making it unpersonal, like this isn't a person.
Mm-hmm.
And you can obscure the fact that somebody wrote the algorithm, and
Yeah.
somebody made the hat, and
Mhm.
somebody designed the cup or
Mhm.
the goblet of fire
Mhm.
to have conditions. It has a metric that it uses
Mhm.
to decide who the champions are for the
Or which
Triwizard
post
Tournament.
gets shown to you or not.
Exactly. It's exactly right. Yes. There's an urge to do that because people don't want to be held accountable. And
Mm.
that there's and
Well,
even
there's
more than
also an
that, there's
efficiency too.
and there's a misunderstanding, right? That actually you do create this gap so that people feel like there's no one to blame.
Or that there's more certainty than there
Yeah.
actually can
Hmm.
be. Like, it doesn't
Sure.
have to be that way.
That's why we give tests instead of listening to teachers,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Well, mhm.
A teacher should be able to tell. I can
Mhm.
tell how much a student knows
Yeah.
better than my tests can tell.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I sit with them and give them enough time
Well,
to
and
just do
because
some
you
math in
spend
front
so
of
much
me.
time with like,
Yeah.
and especially in the sense of a like the learning process isn't this like, oh, okay, done, check it off the list, you don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
there's it's a lot more
It's chaotic.
complicated. It's very chaotic, inconsistent,
Yeah.
contradictory, but also like you can be contradictory, or you or the simple fact that you can make a mistake and still like
Mhm.
have some sort of understanding of something, and like that's not captured in
No, it isn't.
an exam that has a
Partial credit.
score. Yeah.
But if it's like if it's like a multiple choice, often all or nothing
Yeah.
can be pretty rough.
Yeah. Well, I think that this whole thing with the sorting hat and these students, oh, we have Colin has a little brother
Yeah, it
who was
does.
also sorted in Gryffindor.
Rip.
So like Harry's inner monologue throughout all of this, it's all I wrote was like how far we've come, Harry, from year one. Like he is very much like, oh, so and so. I wonder if they know that Slytherin has produced the
Mhm.
most dark witches and wizards. It's
Mhm.
like, dude, okay, way
Oh,
to
4 years of bullying, 3 years of bullying.
true. Way to jump in, but he's like fully into those
Yeah, he
discourses
is.
now
He's immersed in it.
to
It's normed.
recirculate them. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
I think what here's not now we should probably get into this.
Hmm.
Do you want to talk House-elves for a second?
Sure. Yeah.
So this is really fascinating because what we have with the House-elves is norms.
Okay.
Because you can tell, like nearly headless Nick, Ron, they don't
Mm-hmm.
think anything of it.
Nobody does.
And in fact, they reiterate like, oh, they don't want that stuff.
Yeah.
They like this life.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't actually know. It's not like Ron knows
Mm-hmm.
truly. He had never met one
Mm-hmm.
until Dobby. So it's just recirculation.
Yep.
That's one of the most fascinating human downfalls, in my opinion, is like you have a series of people with secondhand knowledge.
Yep.
It's all hearsay. It's turtles all the way down. We just talked about
Jeff
that.
explained this
Yeah.
idiom to me. Idiom, is that
Yeah,
the
I
right
don't
word?
know. Yeah.
I don't know. It's like
kind of.
a long-standing saying that I've heard, but I never actually knew what it meant until I saw it. I saw it somewhere in something I was doing recently, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I've seen this before."
That has to do with the search for the beginning,
Right,
the
right, right. Yeah,
creation.
yeah.
And it's like, well,
The
what
foundation.
came before the turtle?
Yeah, yeah.
It's all
It's
turtles.
all
Yeah.
turtles. We're all turtles.
Yeah. But I think the point stands of like the hearsay here. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting because Hermione is playing the role of, I mean, at times we know of it as postmodernism, of like making something that is really stable, make it unstable,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like,
Yeah.
well, all these witches and wizards are just shrug of the shoulders. It's just house elves. What are you talking about? This
Yeah.
is how it is. And she's like, this is slave labor,
Yeah.
right? And so you have this.
Making the familiar
It's like Bo
change.
Burnham's The Unpaid Interns. I mean, I think we know that more broadly than
Yeah.
we didn't. It's not like everyone was like, "Oh, unpaid internships are good," but we
Well,
grew up at a time when I
yes.
think
What's
our
interesting.
families would be like, "Oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
just take an unpaid
But that's
internship," and
what's
it's like, "Well,
interesting
this is
is that
child
you
labor."
have this that's what I was thinking about the whole time,
Right,
is like in the sense of like progressivism over generations
right.
of like you're born into
You lose it.
something and yeah, you do it oh gosh, it probably is related to that word, that phrase, that research article I was reading where it basically it like decays over time. That's not the right
Mm,
word, but it's like
mm,
it loses the potency
mhm,
because
mhm.
basically we're
Dilutes.
all like dilution,
Yeah.
that's the right word, because you're born into a society and then you have to navigate those norms and make sense of
Mhm,
them, and
mhm.
like the further away from like the the genesis of something, like there was a purpose for, or there was a reason,
Yes,
regardless of whether it was a good or
yes.
bad reason, there was a reason that things started. Like
Right.
there was a reason that house elves were in this position or became in this position. And
Yes.
then the further away you get from that, the more likely you're going to have people be like, this is actually really strange,
And the
you
less
know?
likely that it even resembles the original
True.
intent
Yep.
and setup.
Yeah, it
That
probably
things
got corrupted
change
or.
very significantly over
Mhm.
time because the institution itself isn't stable. The word might be, right? So like house elves
Yeah.
and their relationship to muggles or to wizards isn't stable.
Yeah.
So likely in the same way of like the hat and
Yeah.
all the types of things we're talking about of they change over time, but if you aren't just inquiring about like, oh, this is how it is, should it
Mhm.
still be that way,
Mhm.
then you lose a lot. And
Yeah.
that I think is one of the more healthy ways to go because I think there's a philosophy. I can't, I don't know the name, but it's about basically that most of what life is given.
Mm.
It's given to you. You don't make it,
Mhm.
nor does anybody, which is really interesting, right? All of the people alive right now, we all take as given all of these things that got passed down to us.
Mhm.
So nobody is really at the current level fully responsible for the world as is because it's been passed down to us. And
Mhm.
it's a similar thing, right? But that's why you want to take Hermione's stance and we'll see her evolve this book of how
Mhm.
she thinks about this because eventually, right, she starts eating again
Yeah.
and these types of things, but it ultimately
Yes.
comes from this moment of saying this is a normal behavior that most people aren't noticing,
Mhm.
and she's like, when she hears it, she's like, "This is not normal.
Right,
This is
right.
wrong."
Yeah. I also see Cindy talking about a good reason. Hermione's a good reason to keep bringing muggles into the magical world because it's uncovering people's blind
It is,
spots.
yeah.
Like, I mean, we see that with Hermione,
Mhm.
particularly, not just because she's Hermione, but because she will vocalize or, act on.
And it should be stated as well, because this is Harry as well.
Yep.
I mean, Harry doesn't have this reaction. This is Hermione's moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
But Harry's moral compass with meeting Dobby is really important. The way he actually treats Dobby. And it's
Yeah.
because he has not been immersed. He
Yeah.
was not given the
Right.
legend of how you're supposed to treat house elves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he's like, I
Yeah.
guess I'll just treat this how I would want to be treated.
Mm-hmm. Well, so yes, all of this related back to the sorting hat and to the
Mm,
other things that we've talked about across the podcast episodes with discourses is why discourse is important. Like
mm,
words matter. So this is like going back to my dissertation. It's interesting because they hold power, or
mm.
they keep it.
I like
They
a
keep it.
battery.
but it's also fragile at the same time. It can be fragile. I guess it's not, like it's this weird thing that gets passed because the recirculation, like that's what generates that power of
Mhm.
like if you keep recirculating the same kinds of stories over and over, then that's real. Like that's the reality. It's kind of like, oh well, it's just words. No, it shapes the
That's right.
reality of
So
what
that's what the
is.
philosophy thing that I was talking about
Mhm.
really gets at. It's an ontological thing of like what is real,
Mhm. Yep.
and through discourse, things are made real
Yeah.
that don't have to be.
Mhm.
That reality can be changed
Mhm.
when you look at the discourses, and this is a prime example of this.
Mhm.
Like the reality of the house elf wizard relationship can be changed.
Mhm.
And most of it exists because of, like you're saying, what people say about the
Yeah.
relationship.
And it fits in with like especially like in a psychological sense, like the framing, like people make sense of the world based on existing frameworks. And
Yeah.
so when you pass
What option
down,
do you have?
yeah,
Yeah.
when you pass down like this is what is, or like this is what I'm saying, it can be really challenging to interrogate
Yes, it
that
can.
because it's like, well, what else? What other
Well, and
unless
we
you're
know
exploring other
when
frames.
you learn this stuff, which we did,
Mhm.
I think we also know that you can't be perfect. It's not you. We both have things.
Mhm.
Everyone has things that you take for granted that you just never shine the spotlight on.
Yeah.
But other people do. It's an important social contract too. Of like you should listen to what people are saying because
Mhm.
often they have a moment of a spotlight that you don't. Right? Of like this is something that we should look at and change.
Mhm.
The difficulty, not to get too far into it, with social media is like now we're blinded because there's a ton, everyone
Everything is.
pointing everywhere. It's hard to make sense of it
It is.
rather
It
than
can
like
get
cut out your
overwhelming.
part and go do your part because that's the only option we have. Not everyone can become like the perfect person who changes everything. Nobody can do that. So it's very
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. Input is one of my Clifton Strength,
Yeah.
talents, and so, like, yes, I completely it's hard
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
it's like, in, oh gosh, whatever book it is where Dumbledore has the pensive and he's, like, just trying he's like, "If I could just, like, shake it and sort through all this, like, chaos, like, and figure it out," and that's what it feels like a lot
I
of
think it might
times.
be this one.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess
Hmm.
you probably are right, now that I'm thinking
I think it
about
might
where I
be.
went. But, yeah, he's, like, just trying to see it.
Yeah,
It's hard to make sense of
it is.
all the things at once, you know? Alright, a troll, a hag, a leprechaun walk into a bar. Finish the joke.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that should be the open response. Who can finish the joke?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
McGonagall
I
is just
love that.
like,
Yeah.
Dumbledore.
Yeah.
How is this appropriate? But I wanna know. I wanna know, like, what is it that you're gonna say?
Well, I like that
We'll
whole
get more.
exchange, the idea of him actually, like, acknowledging George or Fred, whichever one it
Yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
like, by name. Like, it really illustrates something about Dumbledore, that he
Mhm.
is complicated, 'cause he has these responsibilities as a headmaster, but, like, doesn't necessarily fit his personality super well. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, he shapes the position as well, but even when we first meet him, he's like, "Let me say a few words. Oddment, blubber, tweaked, nitwit."
Well, I guess, like, when you're old enough and you're just like, "Well,
That one
I don't know."
that's stuck with me so much that it's just like, "This is so interesting. Who is this guy?"
Mhm,
And
mhm.
this is another one, the funeral march where with the song. I think Dumbledore really likes the Weasley twins. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is by the time book 7 rolls around, I think we learn that he's quite mischievous.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
I mean, obviously things turn
So is
dark at
Harry.
times for him,
All these
but
mischievous
yeah, yeah,
people.
they
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Mhm.
the rules be damned. They're not Umbridge.
I will have order. We didn't even mention the
I really hate
Triwizard.
children.
She does hate children. It's very clear. We didn't even mention the Triwizard Tournament.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Oh, we did. Okay. It was established
It's the name of the
700
title. It's the name of the
700
chapter.
okay, 700 years ago
Yeah.
Every 5 years until the death toll got to. I would like to know
Yeah.
what number did you get to
7
of deaths?
dead children?
Oh,
8?
possibly. Probably 7 because 7 is a
Oh, is it
number
magically influential?
that appears
Like, well,
over
now
and
we're
over.
in bad luck.
And again, Hermione's the only one who seems to be concerned about having a death toll.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all
Wait,
like, yeah,
I'm
let's
sorry,
check.
what?
You know, it's so
Come
funny
again?
because, like, yeah, I mean, they put themselves like the witches, and I guess if you have magic, like your risk tolerance is probably going to be
Mhm,
higher
mhm.
than
You know,
muggles,
another thing that's interesting about this whole situation, so they put the age limit on, right?
Uh-huh.
But unless they do the Triwizard Tournament every year,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who will never be eligible.
Yes.
Most students will never be
Well, this is
eligible.
why it's so sad for Fred and George. They said, like, our birthday's in April. Like, that's
Mhm.
so close.
Right, and we won't be able to do it next year.
Yeah.
Even though it'll be 7th year. Like, it's not, I mean, I don't know. Is it clear that they're planning to do it like every 3rd year or something?
No, so it was supposed to be, well, I don't know if they said, like, from here on out, this is what we're gonna try to do, but, like, I think the idea is, like, if you had an every 5-year thing, so thinking of, like,
Every
the
5?
original, if you had the original every 5, then people, and knowing that there was no age limitation at
Everyone would have
all,
at
then
least 1
everyone would have at
chance.
least one
Yeah.
chance to
Some would have 2.
participate, yeah.
Well, it's just kind of interesting, yeah.
Well, and especially
'Cause ultimately, like Harry,
if you're a first year or second year, like, you're
all of them
likely not gonna enter or be
chosen.
chosen,
Yeah.
and so then you wouldn't have a
Which
chance
is
later
a
on.
great, so this is this is where my logic brain came in, and yours
Logic
may have as well,
brain.
which is like, is the age limit necessary?
Mm.
If the qualifications, if the Goblet of Fire
Mm.
is good at picking who the champion should be, it should always be the most powerful wizard. It should always be Cedric, unless there's a 16, 15, 14, or below that's more powerful than him and more ready to participate.
Wait, is this are okay. I was gonna say, are they trying to protect Harry? Is that what's
No, I don't
happening?
know.
Okay,
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
yeah, so I don't know. I don't know the answer. Unless you're
If it's all about Harry, they really mess up because he gets
yes.
chosen.
Unless they're going to admit that they know that the Triwizard or the Goblet of Fire is flawed, which I don't think they would because PR, you know, all these
Yeah.
people are about PR.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that's probably going to the marketing perspective of it, of like, if you're going to bring back this once dangerous thing where kids died, then you're gonna want to, even if it's like not real, you're going to want to project an illusion of like, oh, we're taking all the precautions we can, like we're ensuring that the things aren't as mortally dangerous as once before, and we're gonna have an age limit so that people can
that's
consent,
the real
you know?
argument, is like that the of ageness is just because then they can make their own
Right, the consent part.
Yes, which is fitting for me. It makes some sense. Like, if this is, I don't buy the thing where Dumbledore's like, don't worry, like your life won't be at risk. Like, we know the life is at risk. They fight a
It is at
dragon.
Quidditch too.
What if the dragon just bites off their head? Like, who's gonna stop that? You know.
Yep.
So it is in Quidditch too. Yeah, good point. Yeah. But the
Oh
of
my
ageness
gosh.
makes some sense.
Yeah. I think it was just kind of like a precaution on behalf of like they're bringing this back, and
Right.
it's I
Don't
would
want a
imagine
lawsuit on your hands.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yes,
They're of age.
they're probably yeah. We have
Wizarding
a
lawyers.
corporatized ministry now. It's like, okay, we're gonna not be liable. That's all that I had on this
More than enough.
episode.
Yeah.
More than enough. All right. Until next time.
Wanzer.